Struggle to understand real Spanish when natives speak? Don't worry, you're not alone. In this video, I want to break down a text read by a native word for word. I'll explain each part and the grammar behind it. By the end of the video, you'll see that native Spanish isn't as scary as it seems. I'll also be accompanied by my matecito, but without further ado, let's get into the video.
Hace algunos días decidí pasar un fin de semana solo en una cabaña perdida en la sierra. Quería desconectarme del ruido de la ciudad y pasar 2 días en completo silencio. El lugar era antiguo, de madera oscura, y al llegar me di cuenta de que había olvidado llevar cerillas para encender la chimenea. Después de varios intentos, logré encender un fuego improvisando con el hornillo de la cocina. La primera noche fue tranquila, pero al amanecer encontré algo inquietante, huellas humanas alrededor de la cabaña. Pensé que sería alguien del pueblo, aunque estaba a más de 20 minutos en coche. Esa noche apenas pude dormir. Me despertaba con cualquier ruido, ramas que crujían, golpes de viento en la ventana e incluso escuché pasos cerca de la puerta. Al día siguiente bajé al pueblo y la dueña de la tienda de alimentación me dijo que siempre circulaban historias raras sobre esa cabaña. Volví con más nervios que antes, pero decidí quedarme. La última noche vi a través de la ventana 3 siluetas que se alejaban hacia el bosque. Más tarde supe que eran senderistas perdidos que habían rodeado la cabaña buscando orientación. Todo tenía explicación lógica, pero la experiencia me dejó marcado. En la soledad de la montaña, uno descubre no solo la belleza del paisaje, sino también sus propios miedos más profundos.
All right, let's jump into the text. Hopefully that wasn't too much for you. Now, if you really want to get better at listening, what is the solution? To practice. Anyone who's ever been through any language journey has put in the hours. You need to practice, immerse yourself in the language, listen to it daily, and eventually it will come to you. Now, if you're struggling to find things and you want a guide to specifically get you from wherever you are to a conversational level in Spanish, you can always check out my program. The link will be in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the text. So first sentence here, decidí pasar un fin de semana solo en una cabaña perdida en la sierra. Awesome sentence. We have 2 verbs at the very beginning, decidir and pasar. Decidir means to decide. So it's to make that decision. And we're seeing it here in the past, in the preterite past. There are 2 past tenses in Spanish, the preterite and the imperfect. This right here is a preterite, which is specifically for actions that are done in a specific moment of time. They're done in that moment, that's it. They don't repeat again, which is why we're seeing it. And it's a very good example with decidir, because that's to decide. A lot of the time when you're deciding, you decide in that split moment. So, decidí pasar. I decided to spend. Pasar. Awesome verb, very versatile verb in Spanish, a lot of meanings. In the verb mastery section of the program, you'll see all of the meanings in there. There are about 16 plus, including idiomatic ones. But in this context, it is to spend. So I decided to spend, followed by the time period, which is un fin de semana, a weekend. So I decided to spend a weekend. Quick tip here with fin de, right? Fin de semana. You can simply say fin de. It's more of a colloquial way to say weekend. So that would just be these 2 words here, fin de, and they're together. Fin de. So I decided to spend a weekend alone, solo, en una cabaña perdida en la sierra. In a isolated cabin, right? En la sierra. Sierra being mountain ranges, mountains. So that's the first sentence done. Decidí pasar un fin de semana solo en una cabaña perdida en la sierra. Next sentence. Quería desconectarme del ruido de la ciudad y pasar 2 días en completo silencio. Awesome sentence. So we have the verb querer. This is very, very useful in Spanish. One of the verbs I'd recommend learning first if you're a very beginner. So we have querer, which means to want. We can see it here. Quería. This means I was wanting, okay? Quería desconectarme. I was wanting. We're seeing it in the imperfect. So you were wanting this thing over a period of time. It's not like you wanted it in a split second. You were wanting to do this thing. It's used a lot in this tense. So quería desconectarme. So desconectarse is the verb here, to disconnect. Basically to disconnect, right? So I was wanting to disconnect from the del. So de plus el come together and it forms del, right? So from the noise de la ciudad, of the city, right? So of the city's noise, you could say. And connector there, y. Again, we can see pasar plus the time. So this means and spend 2 days en completo silencio. Very similar to English, in complete silence. On to the next one. El lugar era antiguo, de madera oscura, y al llegar me di cuenta de que había olvidado llevar cerillas para encender la chimenea. So it's quite a long one here. So we'll start from the top. El lugar era antiguo. We're giving descriptions in the past of how something was. So we're going to use the verb ser. And we're basically telling to the listener, this is how this thing was. And whenever we're giving descriptions, we're going to use it in the imperfect. We're not going to say el lugar fue antiguo. We're going to use era antiguo. Again, de madera, this is how you say of whatever color the thing was. So de madera oscura, of dark, right? Of dark wood. And al llegar, awesome little construct here. Al plus the infinitive means upon arriving to that place. So I could also say al entrar al edificio, sorry. So al entrar en el edificio, or al entrar al edificio. That would mean upon entering the building, but here we're saying upon arriving. So y al llegar, and upon arriving. Awesome little one here. Very useful in Spanish. This means to realize. Darse cuenta. Darse cuenta. So this is used in the preterite tense. So me di cuenta, right? So I realized in that second it was done. This is used a lot. Darse cuenta in the past is used a lot with the preterite or in the preterite tense. So me di cuenta de que. So this has to be like this. De que. This is grammatically correct. In a lot of colloquial speech, a lot of natives will drop the de. However, I would recommend learning it with the de because that's correct. Especially if you ever, for whatever reason, you start writing more, let's say, more serious intellectual, formal writing, or maybe you're in a formal setting, this is how you should say it. So, al llegar, so upon arriving, me di cuenta de que, I realized that había olvidado llevar. So I had, this is in the pluperfect in Spanish. So to had done something. So this is saying I had forgotten. I had forgotten. So it's the verb haber in the imperfect, right? But we just refer it to, we refer to it as the pluperfect in Spanish, plus the past participle. And that's what we're seeing here, the past participle. This is from the verb olvidar, which is to forget. Now in English, the participle would go from the verb to forget to forgotten. So that's what we're seeing. I had forgotten. To take, llevar, awesome verb. A lot of meanings as well, llevar. That's another section in the program. Llevar cerillas. Cerillas is just matches. Now there are a few ways to say this depending on the region. I personally say fósforo, right? So I would say llevar fósforos, but I believe cerillas is used a lot more in Spain. Llevar cerillas para encender la chimenea. So in order to. So, y al llegar me di cuenta de que había olvidado llevar cerillas para encender la chimenea. So upon arriving, I realized that I had forgotten to take matches in order to, we need this here. In English, we would just, if we were to translate it literally, we would say llevar cerillas, encender la chimenea. We can't say that. We need to have the para. We have to put the para in there. And whenever you can, you've almost got to think about this quite consciously when you're speaking Spanish at the very beginning. Whenever you're able to fit in order to do a verb, para is probably going to go in there, and you need it in there. So para encender, in order to light the chimney, la chimenea. Después de varios intentos, so after various attempts, logré prender un fuego, okay? Logré prender un fuego. Lograr. This is an awesome verb, again, multiple meanings, very versatile. Lograr here means to manage, and it's using the preterite. So I managed. It's something that I managed to do in that moment. So I managed to start, right? To light, probably better used here. So I managed to light un fuego, a fire. Logré prender un fuego improvisando. So this is the progressive being used. Improvising with, con, right? Con, the preposition with, el hornillo de la cocina. So I managed to light fire improvising with the stove of the kitchen, de la cocina. All right, so that's that first paragraph done. If you're having any trouble, leave comments down in the descriptions or down in the comment section, and I'll respond to them. Next little paragraph we have, la primera noche fue tranquila. So la primera noche fue tranquila. Here we can see the use of ser in the preterite. Why are we using the preterite here? Because we're saying the first night, it's time specific. We know what we're talking about. So in that first night, it was calm. It was a lovely night. That was done. It's not a progressive or a reoccurring thing. The first night was tranquil, right? It was cool, tranquil, calm. That is the preterite in use. We know the time or the period of time. That's why we're using ser in the preterite there. Next little sentence. Pero al amanecer encontré algo inquietante. Awesome word here. Awesome little adjective. So again, but, pero, al amanecer. So we can see another little construct which we saw earlier, which was here. Al llegar. Al llegar, upon doing that thing. Al amanecer, upon waking up. So if you didn't know, in Spanish there are two ways you could say to wake up. Despertarse and amanecer. Either or, I believe amanecer might be a bit more formal. I could be wrong with that, but that's just from my knowledge. So pero al amanecer encontré. The verb encontrar, again, multiple meanings, but here it means I found. So it's being used in the preterite tense, the yo form, encontré. So I found something inquietante. So this here, worrying, okay? So I found something worrying, disturbing. That's what that means. Huellas humanas alrededor de la cabaña. So human prints, so humanas here being the adjective, and this huellas being the noun, human prints, alrededor de la cabaña, around the cabin. Very word for word. Next sentence, pensé que sería alguien del pueblo. Pensé que sería alguien del pueblo. So I thought, pensar, to think, using the preterite because in that moment I thought. So he found these prints and he thought in that moment, or I thought in that moment, that it would be someone from the town. So I thought that it would be someone from the town. Then we have a little coma here. Aunque estaba a más de 20 minutos en coche. So this sentence here means although it was a 25-minute drive away. That's what that's saying. So we have aunque, although. Aunque has a few different meanings depending on the sentence. Here it means although or even though, although. And then we see estar in the imperfect. So aunque estaba. Why? Because it's this ongoing thing. It's not like bam, it was only a 25-minute drive once. It's an ongoing thing that was happening in the past. It's given that description. So estar, estaba a. This can throw a lot of people off. So estar a means to be away. In English, we usually have away further on in the sentence, but in Spanish it's estar a. If someone comes up to me and says, or rings me and says, how far are you away? I could respond by saying, estoy a 15 minutos. I am 15 minutes away. Very awesome little phrase, construct, whatever you want to call it, as long as it sticks in your brain. That is the meaning of that one. So estaba a, so it was more than, remember in English we say the majority of the sentence and we put away further to the end. So we have it was more than, right? Más de, more than. 20 minutos, 25 minutes, by car, in car, if you want to think of it literally, but by car. So it was, although it was more than a 25-minute drive away. That's what that's saying. Or 25 minutes away by car. Esa noche apenas pude dormir. So this, we have the use of the preterite tense with the verb poder, to be able to, or can, as we say in English. And why are we using it in the preterite? Because it's being time specific again. That night. We know that it's that night. It's not a reoccurring thing in the past. It didn't happen over multiple nights. It's a specific night. Esa noche, I barely slept. That's what that's saying. I could barely sleep. Me despertaba con cualquier ruido. So, me despertaba con cualquier ruido. Ruido. So, I was waking. We have despertarse. Here we have it in the imperfect tense. So, I was waking multiple times. We're giving a picture, description to the listener of how this night was. We're not saying I woke up in the night. That would be the preterite. We're saying I was waking up many times in the night because of the noises, okay? So me despertaba con cualquier ruido. So I was waking up basically by random noises, but with any noises. Cualquier here is a referent, so it's basically saying this thing when we're not being specific about the thing, or we don't know what the thing is, but we're just saying, you know, these noises. We don't know what the noises exactly were, which is why we're using cualquier. You'll see this a lot, and with context, it'll become more clear, but this is what it means here. So with any noise. So I was waking up with any noise. That's what that's saying. With, con, any noise. Cualquier ruido. Ramas que crujían. So branches that were cracking, were crunching throughout the night. Again, imperfect, because they were ongoing. It's not like it crunched once. If I said la rama crujo, that's preterite. It's in that moment. Golpes de viento en la ventana, right? So golpes being like hits. So this is almost like strikes of wind in or on the window. Incluso escuché pasos cerca de la puerta. Also, right? Or even, I even heard escuchar, to listen, to hear. Escuché pasos, so I heard footsteps or steps cerca de la puerta, close to the door. Al día siguiente bajé al pueblo. So al día siguiente, just meaning the next day. You can also say el próximo día, either or, perfectly fine. Al día siguiente bajé al pueblo. So bajar, multiple meanings again. The overall idea of it is to lower something. So here we're saying I basically lowered myself down to the little town. But you get the idea of I just came down to the town. Okay? So al día siguiente bajé al pueblo. So I came down to the town. Again, al, a plus el equals al. Same as de plus el equals del. Y la dueña de la despensa me dijo que siempre circulaban historias raras sobre esa cabaña. So the woman of, let's just call it the shop for now. So the owner, la dueña de la despensa, right? The owner of the shop, me dijo, she told me. Now, decir in the preterite, she told me in that moment. So whenever you want to say somebody told somebody something, or I told somebody something, you're going to use the preterite tense. So me dijo, she told me, que very important, this que, that, so she told me that siempre circulaban historias raras. That there were always weird stories circulating, going around. So there were always, we use circular here in the imperfect. Why? Because they were always going around. One story didn't just circulate once. It wasn't a rumor for 1 second. It was always going around. These stories were always going around. So she told me that there were always weird stories going around. And there's siempre here. Let's have a quick think. Would I be able to say always in English? So she told me that always, no. So she told me that weird stories were always going around. So here, the sentence structure from Spanish to English is almost completely opposite, but you get a feel for that the more you get exposed to Spanish. Spanish is a lot more, I guess, fluid with where you can put certain things. So, que siempre circulaban historias raras sobre esa cabaña. So, about that cabin. Volví con más nervios que antes, pero decidí quedarme. So, volver, to return. This is in the preterite, so I returned. Volví, and I returned with what? Con más nervios, with more nerves, with more fear. You can almost get that idea from that. So I returned with more fear than before. Very, word for word, than before. Pero, decidí quedarme. We already know what decidí is because we started off with this story. So decidí, I decided to stay there, to remain there. So quedar, again, a lot of meanings. That's all broken down in that section of the program. In this one, it just means to remain, used with the reflexive. So quedarse, to remain in that spot. Pero decidí quedarme. But I decided to stay, remain. Final little paragraph here. La última noche, so the last night, la última noche, vi a través de la ventana 3 siluetas que se alejaban hacia el bosque. So the last night, ver, I saw, vi in el pasado, in the past, sorry. Okay, so ver in the preterite. So that is vi. Ver in the preterite is irregular. Yes, I believe. Okay, is irregular, so you're gonna have to learn those conjugations. And then we have a través de la ventana. So I saw through, a través de. These are this right here, a través de. Awesome little phrase. Basically, it has a few meanings, but here it means through. So you're looking through something. Whenever you want to say, I looked through the window, I looked through the door, a través de. Although through the window would probably make more sense than through the door. But vi a través de la ventana. So I saw through the window. And what did this person see? 3 siluetas. 3 silhouettes. That, right? So I saw through the window 3 silhouettes that se alejaban hacia el bosque. So alejarse means to go away, to get away, but like more of a progressive, you could say. And especially because we're using it in the imperfect tense here, it gives that idea of they were moving away rather than they moved away in a second. So, que se alejaban hacia el bosque. So that were going away towards the forest, let's say, el bosque. Hacia, towards. Very useful with prepositions of place and direction. I should definitely mention direction more than place. So, hacia el bosque. Más tarde, so later on, later, más tarde, supe que eran senderistas perdidos. Okay, so later, so this is actually from the verb saber, which means to know. If we use saber in the preterite tense, which is what we have here, it's almost this sense of learning. So to figure out. That is very different from what you would believe it would be if you thought about it. So it takes almost a completely different meaning to what we're used to in English with to know in the past. But you can kind of see how it means to figure out, because the preterite tense is used for that in the moment things. And if you were to know something in that moment, it's like you're figuring that out. You learnt about that thing. So later, I figured out, I learnt, I knew, you can kind of say, right? I figured out that eran senderistas perdidos. So they were hikers lost. So lost hikers. Again, senderistas being hiker, that's the noun, and perdidos, adjective. Adjectives usually go after the nouns. That's covered in the beginner section of the grammar in the program. But eran senderistas perdidos. So we're talking about descriptions again in the past. We use ser in the imperfect. So they were lost hikers that que habían rodeado la cabaña buscando orientación. So that had rodeado, so rodear means to surround, that had surrounded. So again, this is the pluperfect in Spanish. We saw it up near the top somewhere, wherever it was. Había olvidado. So here, to had done something. Here we're saying that the hikers had surrounded the cabin. So habían rodeado la cabaña. And here we can see it in the they form with a pluperfect, which is why it's got this an or ian ending, I should say, because we're talking about they, the hikers, they, that goes in this form, takes this form. Habían rodeado la cabaña buscando orientación. So looking for orientation, direction, you get that idea. So looking for, buscar, here we have it in the progressive, looking for. A lot of times a mistake that a lot of beginners make is putting por or para. I know por and para is a massive, it's very difficult for a lot of beginners and even intermediates to get their head around. But a very common mistake is putting por or para after buscar. It's already implied. You don't need to ever put por or para after buscar. So buscando orientación. So looking for orientation. Todo tenía explicación lógica. So everything had a logical explanation. Here we have todo, everything, had, okay, but we're talking about this ongoing thing. Everything was having this logical explanation. Everything that was happening had a logical explanation. Pero la experiencia me dejó marcado. Awesome idiomatic phrase here, dejar marcado. So that's like to leave an impact. So it left me impacted or marked, you could literally say. But the experience, pero la experiencia me dejó marcado. Left me marked, left me marked. Left a good impression. En la soledad de la montaña. So en la soledad de la montaña. So in the I can't think of the word in English. In the solitary of the mountain. I probably got that wrong. So in the solitary of the mountain, that's what I was saying. En la soledad de la montaña, uno descubre. So one discovers, descubrir, to discover. Okay, descubrir, to discover. This is just in the present tense. So all of this is narrated in the past, and now it's almost a conclusion of what he's thinking in this moment. So, en la soledad de la montaña, uno descubre. So one discovers a person, as we say in English. One discovers faith. One discovers the treasures of life. One discovers how to draw. That type of one. So uno descubre no solo la belleza del paisaje, not only, solo being only here. So you can see how words change with the words that are around them. So here we have solo, and this means not only, but if we look up here, whereabouts is it? I know there's a solo somewhere else in here that we went over, which meant alone. You'll be able to see it somewhere. I'm probably going over it. But, so uno descubre no solo la belleza del paisaje. So one discovers not only the beauty of the landscape, yeah, of the, again, de plus el, del paisaje, of the landscape, but also, very useful word, sino. A lot of people think it's separate, but it's together, sino, but rather. So one discovers not only the beauty of the landscape, of the terrain, but rather, también, so but also here, sus propios miedos más profundos. So, but also their own, so yeah, their own most feared fears. That's what that's saying. So, sus propios miedos, their own fears, their deepest own fears, más profundos. So this is the adjective at the end, más profundos. Can't get that one. So más profundos is the adjective at the end, más profundos. This más, intensifier, más profundos meaning most profound, right? Fears, their own most profound fears. That's what that's saying. Alrighty, that was the text in its entirety. Went through everything. Make sure to leave any questions down below. Like I say, check out the program. It's awesome. It's getting a lot of people amazing results. I'm in there every day to correct you guys as well. But any questions, anything you didn't understand, leave it in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And we'll see each other in the next video. Nos vemos.